What sorts of people do you think chambers are looking for in general common law, for example?
I think they're looking for people who are keen and willing to learn. I think they're looking for people that they could imagine being a colleague in chambers, so people who are personable, approachable, ready to learn, and just nice.
Set aside any preconceptions that you've got about the bar. The bar is a wonderfully diverse place in terms of the people and the experiences that you'll meet. I know that a lot of people are concerned that you can only be a barrister if you've got first from Oxbridge. That's absolutely not the case. Yes, there are lots of people who have firsts from Oxbridge, but there are lots of people who don't, and I am one of them. So you need to put aside any feeling that you have that you don't meet up to the grade, if that's something that concerns you, because it will hold you back. And the bar is an extremely competitive place, as you already know, and getting pupillage is extremely competitive, and you need to be able to give it your best shot. And to do that, you need to have confidence in yourself and in your own abilities. I think that if you want to be a barrister, the bar is a place for you. And it's as simple as that. So put aside any feelings that you may have that you don't fit in, or you don't quite match up to what you think a barrister should be, because you will fit in, you'll find your place, you'll find your people, and you'll make it a place for you, and the bar will be a much better place for it.
There is a portmanteau of skills that one needs to bring to being a barrister, and you don't just learn them in a set arena. And I also think that these days most progressive chambers will know that there are lots of different ways of acquiring a particular skill set, other than having, as it were, got 10 out of 10 at life and having gone to the right kind of university and, you know, being president of the Mooting Society and having been an amazing debater. Basically, there are lots of different ways of getting there, and it's not necessarily following a very set path that you might think is the right path. There is more diversity at the bar. There's a lot to work on, but I think it's more interesting now than it was when I applied for pupillage. And when I look at people's profiles, I often find, gosh, they've actually done something really interesting. And I say this in many respects, having got things right, and having gone to the right sort of university and stuff like that. It still wasn't a walk in the park. It was still really hard. I would say, though, that having come to the other side of that, now that I'm practicing as a barrister, the best people that I know at the bar aren't necessarily people who have got it all right. So I think that that's also something really important to remember, that doesn't direct necessarily where your career is going to go in the future. So I think that that's probably my best tip, is not to feel too self-conscious about where you started off from, because there are lots and lots of different people who will make good barristers, and there's no set formula in terms of what your CV looks like.
Get involved in volunteering, ideally with some sort of legal charity or cause, but it doesn't have to be strictly legal. Students who I've advised, all of them who successfully obtained pupillage have been able to show that they have volunteered for at least one particular organisation or cause.
I would suggest you do voluntary work or any other activity that sets you apart from other applicants. For example, if you're interested in criminal defense work or civil work that involves civil liberties, I would suggest that you do some voluntary work in Citizen Advice Bureau or law centers or any other voluntary organizations or charities.
Do between, in my view, 3 to 5 mini pupillages. You don't want to be doing too many, but you want to show that you have done enough. And if you can, do the mini pupillages with chambers that you're interested in applying to. Some of them will be assessed. An ideal way obviously to show your capabilities, but not always possible to get a mini pupillage with the chambers that you are targeting. But 3 to 5 generally is a bit of a magic number, because it shows that you've done enough. You've had a good amount of experience with different chambers.
Show commitment by perhaps understanding or undertaking work experience and interesting and novel opportunities that set you apart from your fellow applicants.
Paralegal work. This is a way to distinguish between you and other people that may share the same academic credentials. Students that I've advised have been struggling to get pupillage have eventually found a way in through doing paralegal work, because that way they get excellent experience at court, excellent experience preparing cases, and also make contacts within the profession, both with barristers, but more importantly with solicitors, who will be their future instructing solicitors.
Do your research. It's so frustrating when you are interviewing candidates and you realise that that candidate hasn't actually done any research into the set that they're applying to. The reason it's frustrating is that the number of chambers you can apply to is limited. And if you've used up one of your limited applications in applying to a set that doesn't do the area that you want to practice in, effectively you've wasted that space and you've wasted your opportunity to get pupillage in a set that you want to be in. You need to really know what type of law that chamber's practices and if that aligns with what you want to do. At the same time, it's absolutely fine that if you don't know what area of law you want to do and you want to keep your options open for as long as you can, that's absolutely fine. And in many ways, I wish that's something I had thought about at that stage, because you can't really know what you want to do until you're doing it. You can't really know if you're going to enjoy a particular area of law until you're doing it. So that's absolutely fine, but you need to at least have that foundation, either that you want to have a broad practice group, or you want to practice in a particular area and make sure that that chambers does that area. Similarly, if you are interested in practicing crime, it's important to know what types of crime that set does. If you're only interested in defending, it's important that you are you do your research into whether that set does a broad mix of prosecution work and defence, and whether as a pupil it will be open to you to only do defence work. Similarly, if you are interested in prosecuting, it's important that you don't waste an application in applying to a set that only does defence work. So really do your research before you make your applications, because you could potentially be wasting an application on a set that really isn't somewhere you want to be.
Research the chambers that you want to apply to so that you don't waste their time and your time if you know very little about the chambers that you've applied to.
It's not just about what kind of area of law they specialise in. I mean, it's great if you already know what area of law you want to specialise in, but actually going to a place where you might experience different areas is quite a nice thing to do in some respects. It takes some of the pressure off and you get to explore a bit more what you might be interested in, because practice is so very different from just learning it in a very theoretical setting. But other things that you might want to look at is, well, how many people are there in that set? Is it a small set? Is it a very large set? Does it have a very corporate feel? Is it, maybe a bit friendlier and less formal? How many silks do they have? And also actually have a really good look at the background of the junior tenants, because mostly you can absolutely sort of go into their individual profiles and have a look at what they're doing, where they've been, what their story is, and you might find some of that quite surprising.
For interview, make sure you research your chambers that you're interviewing at. Be up to date with case law and news that relates to the area that you want to go into.
It is very important to start preparing well in advance, not during the month when the gateway opens. Identify the chambers that you have selected as your list. And there has been a lot of talk about the number of chambers that you want to apply. People often talk about it goes up to hundreds, but I would suggest anything between 25 and 35 is a good number, because then you can prepare for it well.
Be realistic in your applications so as not to waste an application. There may be an opportunity to join that set of chambers you really want to a little later in your career.
When it comes to a pupillage, all you need to do is to start somewhere, because you don't know where you're going to end up at the bar. People move around a lot more than you might imagine they do, and it's something that only becomes obvious really after you've started and you realise that all sorts of people from your chambers might have started from very different chambers or even from a different career.
Each application is a new application. Do not apply like a photocopying machine, because each chambers will be looking for certain aspects of their practice, and you need to maneuver your experience and skills according to the needs of those chambers.
Make sure you allocate some time that you can dedicate to doing your application without any distractions. Make sure you read it back, check for mistakes, get someone else to read it. The most important thing is that you take that time to look at it very carefully. You don't want duplications, you don't want to be verbose, you want it to be snappy and pithy, and that's the way to do it.
Do get somebody else to read over your application before you send it in, because there will always be things that other people can spot. I should say with the application where I pretty much wrote, "I very keen eye for detail," I had about 4 different people reading that application. Somehow or other, none of them managed to spot that, but there we have it.
Think about what makes you unique. We hear a lot about USPs, unique selling points, and it's something that's applicable also at the bar. Most candidates will come to apply with very similar experiences. They will have good degree results, they will have decent A-levels, they'll have done some mini pupillages, they'll have hopefully done some other extracurricular activities. That's not going to set you apart in what is a very competitive field. Think about what makes you unique as a candidate, and it doesn't have to be law related. I've spoken to somebody who was a pilot and never mentioned it on their application form, or people who have had acting careers, or all sorts of weird and wonderful things. You might think that that's got absolutely nothing to do with the bar, but quite to the contrary, it makes you a normal person, and that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for identikit applicants. We want to see who you are, what makes you you. And also, it helps your interviewers to remember you. It may be that you are, the person who is the pilot has stuck out in my mind because of your broad range of experiences or otherwise. So make sure you put forward the whole of you, who you are, what makes you you, what makes you unique.
Really think about when you're filling out an application form, that it's a piece of advocacy. So everything that you're putting in that form should demonstrate a skill that you have, which you think is relevant to becoming a barrister. Or it should be something which is a direct experience that's relevant to becoming a barrister. And you can really draw on all of your experience. So it could be something that you've done that shows that you're a really hard worker. And that could be something as simple as really persevering in an activity which has actually got nothing to do with the law. But that might show that you're a really hard worker, you're really focused, you're really driven. And all those things are really important.
Do not cut and paste and make it a cut and paste job, because you will be surprised to see how many applications come without the change of the name of the chambers. I have seen it in my drafts myself. That's why I'm I feel it's important to start preparing early on so that you have plenty of time to focus on the chambers and the type of your application, because I feel each application will have its own merit. Pitch. This was the most important part of my application because I felt I had to pitch my inter-transferable skills at a level when everybody would ask, seeing my CV, why is this person transferring to the bar, having had a full career in medicine? I had to pitch my transferable skills as a person who can sieve through stacks and stacks of information at a short period of time. I have people skills, and I have organizational skills to focus my work, particularly when you get your brief the night before and prepare for a trial the day after.
Keep the CV very short and to the point. At this stage in your career, unless you're coming in from second careers, really my sort of tip is to keep the CV round about 2 pages and have it set out in a very clear format that leads the reader to the relevant experience and why it would be relevant for their chambers. So you may have to amend the CV to suit the particular chambers, but shouldn't really ever go over 2 pages.
Before a pupillage interview, do make sure that you both sleep and eat. It's what I tell my clients when they're about to give evidence. You know, it's good advice. Don't turn up not having slept. It's a really bad idea. You won't give the best of yourself. You need to be sharp, and you again need to put the odds on your side by making sure that you haven't done something stupid like self-sabotage by not eating on the morning of an interview. So do that.
For the interview day, make sure you get there early. Plan your day. You want to get there early enough to be able to soak in the atmosphere, calm down, gather your thoughts, and make sure you've reread your application. The worst thing is going to an interview and someone asks you about something you've put in your application form, you can't remember putting it in, and finding yourself flummoxed. Make sure you're familiar with your own application form.
Be yourself. It's so important that you allow your own personality to shine through at the interview. People sometimes think that they have to act a certain way or be a certain way at the interview because they think that that's how barristers are, that's how barristers act. It's absolutely not true. So often students will say to me, oh, I didn't realize that barristers were normal. Well, surprise, surprise, we are very normal. And it's important that you allow your true self to shine through, because that's really what we're looking for. We're not looking for people who are, you know, who pretending to be somebody that they're not. And unfortunately, for anybody who thinks that that's the case, we as barristers are experts in reading people, and we can very easily tell when somebody is not being their true self. So often we see at interview people and you can tell that their true personality is bubbling on just underneath the surface, and they're trying really hard to hold it in. And I find that very sad. I think you absolutely need to be yourself. Let your true self come through, because it could very well be that that is exactly the person that Chambers is looking for.
I found myself in interviews pretending to be someone I wasn't, and I didn't get very far. And I thought they wanted a particular type of person. It got to my final interview, I thought, stuff it. I've messed up so many interviews before, I might as well just be myself. I had plans for the next year, so even if I didn't get it, it wasn't going to be a massive issue. So that took the pressure off. And they asked me what I did in my spare time, and instead of turning around and saying, oh, I love reading law reports and reading, I just said I enjoy watching the football down the pub with some friends. and they really liked that, and they asked me what team I supported, and that got a really nice conversation going. That, of course, was many years ago. Now you have a bit more structure to pupillage interviews, and they have set criteria. So do look at that criteria, look at what chambers are looking for, and make sure you link in every single thing you say. You link in with an example. Don't just say, I'm really analytical. Well, okay, so what does that mean in real terms? How has your analysis of a situation enabled you to get a good result, or enabled a positive outcome in something?
When you're given examples of what you've done, they must be clear and concise. And the STAR model is a good model to start with. You don't have to use it for every single answer that you give, but generally, if you think about what it was that you did and how you did it, and then what you achieved at the end, it works well. And this also mirrors the way that chambers conduct their interviews: situation, task, action, result type questions.
One question I got was, how do you cope with pressure? And I said, well, I've worked in 2 takeaways, and if you work in a takeaway, you know, I think that's pretty good pressure. You don't deal with the ordinary person who is quite reasonable. They want their food, they want it now. The pressure of working in the kitchen is really intense. And I think that was quite a good example, because it wasn't law related. It showed that I had other experience outside of doing mini pupillages, debating, mooting. I was actually showing that I was I had a life outside of law. I think that was important too.
Demonstrate that you are rounded and grounded. Outside interests and hobbies are always of interest to those interviewing you. Other things that you're passionate about.
In interview, if you are faced with a question that you're not really sure about, ask for clarification. Don't be afraid to ask for time to have a think. Chambers do not want to hear the first thing that comes out of your mouth. They want a considered, thoughtful response.
Be confident and ready to demonstrate what you know. For example, you may know of a recent case discussing an interesting point of law, or a piece you've written.
Be kind to yourself. There's no point in replaying your interview over and over and over again in your head, thinking, I should have said this, I should have said that. Take that time to reflect and think, right, if I need to do it again, what other things will I say? There's no point in kicking yourself, because you can't turn back time, but you can be prepared for your next interview.
Continue to work at the skills that you've acquired until you get the place that you are looking for. Continue to attend seminars, workshops in that field that you've chosen as your area of specialization, so that you continue to develop your skills in that area, so that when you eventually do attend for interview, you can tell the chambers that you've applied to the kind of work that you're doing that is in line with your ambition.
Be persistent. I wrote 96 applications for pupillage before getting that one opportunity, which turned out to be a funded 12-month pupillage. And would you believe that I've kept every single rejection letter that I received, all 95 of them, to remind me after 30 years of the journey that I've been on in practice.
It's really hard to get pupillage, and sometimes it will feel like there's no rhyme or reason to why you might have been turned down. If that does happen to you, what I would say is don't lose heart, because there are lots of people who will apply in successive years who eventually do get there, and they are every bit as good as the people who might have tried and got there first time round. So I do think it's really important to remember that sometimes bad luck can intervene, sometimes there might just have been a better candidate on that day.
Persevere, because you may not get the first set of chambers that you apply to, or the second or the third, but do persevere, continue to apply until you get a place. Sixthly, do not volunteer to do an interview on the morning after you've had a long night.
I expect some of the tips that I've got, other people will have as well.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Well,
Don't
I
tell
did
us.
my homework. I've even done the whole.
Rachel, I think you're outstanding for preparation.
Well, that'll be the only outstanding I've ever got, actually.
Okay.
Right.
When you're ready. Oh no. So embarrassing.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Right.
Compose.
Miss Nelson, when you are ready.
Oh, I feel like I'm in advanced criminal law all over again. The barrister that you will be is the barrister that you are, the person that you are.
Can I stop you there for a moment?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. My other half is just, okay. You finished? Okay. Okay, sorry about that.
I'm just switching off my phones because, and I've sent the children downstairs and I've barricaded the door.
Okay. All right, you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So I'm Rachel Chan. I'm a, sorry, I'm swiveling as well. That's one thing that you shouldn't do in interview.
No, you should not. You should not, Rachel. Come on,
No,
get
you
it
should not.
together, girl. Get it together.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
You're most welcome. And it's lovely to see you.